Welcome to our Infinite Energy podcast. Today with us is Joe Perez. Joe is the Director of Business Development at Sunstack and one of my favorite people in the solar industry who I've met over the years. Joe and Alex and myself, we've known each other probably for 5 or 6 years now, and we're really excited to have him on this podcast. Welcome to the podcast, Joe.
Welcome.
Thanks, Danny. You say that to all the guys, I'm sure.
Well, you can listen to the other podcasts. I haven't said it to anyone else yet, but it's truly, it's great to have you here. When we decided to start this podcast, you were one of the first people I mentioned that I want to talk to because you're so charismatic and have such a track record of, knowledge in this industry.
I appreciate that. It's that's quite a compliment coming from you guys.
Joe, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of where you grew up?
It's funny. I tell people all the time, and has been the story since I left for college. I tell people I'm from New York, and automatically you can see behind their eyes they're thinking like, oh, this guy's from the Bronx or Manhattan. They're thinking the mean streets of New York with, graffiti and garbage on the street. I grew up in upstate New York, in the Hudson River Valley, among apple orchards and trout streams, and had this really kind of great childhood in terms of geography, because I could, in the same day, I could, work on my uncle's farm and, catch the afternoon tour of the Natural History Museum in Manhattan. Only being an hour and a half north of the city by car and even quicker by train, it just was kind of a neat experience as a kid, and especially as a high school kid, skipping school to catch baseball games at Shea Stadium or whatever. So it was a really great childhood in terms of being here. It also led to a lot of cultural experiences, which were some of my favorite. My family were immigrants from Norway.
Oh, wow. And,
my mom's side is from Norway. My dad's side is from Spain. And so lots of fish. We ate lots of fish all the time. And so, going to school in my lunch pail, anything could have been in there, like smoked herring, or, something very ethnic out of my grandmother's kitchen, most of which would not be traded with the other kids. Not because I wouldn't want to trade it, but also because they wouldn't take that trade.
No herring for the other kids. Got it.
Yeah, no kippers for the other kids. Yeah. So it was great. I had this kind of awesome childhood that, my family, like I said, they were immigrants from Spain and Norway. Everyone kind of ran their own business. My uncles, or my great grandfather and his brother ran a barge from New York City on the Hudson River up to where I live now. So all of the farm goods would be transported on a daily or semi-daily basis. And then the Spanish side of my family, they had well drilling. So I was always around entrepreneurs, always seeing the struggle, always seeing, what it takes to come to a new place and kind of stake your claim. And that's really played a part in my life. And then also when I was getting into my teenage years, IBM, the computer company, they had a really large facility here in Fishkill. And when that closed down, it kind of sent a shockwave. This was the late 80s. And so there was a lot of economic distress in my area. And so it gave me a really clear picture of what's important, because as a family, we weren't really directly affected. Some of the ancillary businesses that were in that supply chain, I think we were touched there, but I got to see this really great view of kind of like the best of the American dream, right? Immigration to a place that's uniquely situated between, these beautiful slices of environment and nature, juxtaposed to, one of the largest urban centers in the whole world. Um, running our own businesses, working for other people, working with other people, and then seeing like this macro type of large corporation and how it existed and what effect it had on my community. And that was all before I graduated high school and moved to Chicago for college. So it was like, when I look back at my childhood, what a uniquely awesome perspective I gained to meet today's challenges.
Yeah, you're
It's
like the prototypical North American, example of multicultural background, and it's such a weird mix too, like Norwegian and Spanish, right? You're first generation born in the United States, then?
Second generation. And my, I think, people always say, oh, what a different cultures. No, they all just love cod. Lots
Is
of
that
lots
is
of
that
fish.
what brought your mom and dad together? Is the love of
It
cod?
must have been the fish. I don't know.
So funny. You were mentioning about moving to Chicago, to Chicago, to university. Yeah, I think you went to Loyola University in Chicago, right?
Yeah, I went to Loyola.
Yeah. How was that? What did you study?
So Loyola was a fantastic time. Like a lot of people, the friends you make at university are the kind of the friends that you end up, taking with you for the rest of your life. Some of my childhood friends I still am very close with and spend a lot of time with. But those university guys really fomented kind of who I was socially and gave me a lot of understanding of who I was. My time studying there, I wasn't a hugely ambitious student. Um,
Makes two of us.
outside of taking a little extra time to stretch my legs with different majors. But I graduated with a communications degree, which a lot of people, really kind of frowned on over the years. It's a great general degree to kind of plug into a number of things. Since graduating, I've worked in Major League Baseball, community mental health, and now renewable energy, and have done really well in each one of those spheres. So I don't know if it's the degree, but Loyola was a fantastic time. Having the city of Chicago as my campus just was fantastic. I got to spend a lot of time on Lake Michigan. I'm a big fan of the Great Lakes. People who have never lived or on or around the Great Lakes don't really understand just what the draw is and the majesty and beauty that you get to observe every day.
I remember when I moved to Canada and went to the Great Lakes for the first time, and I'm like, this is an ocean. This is not a lake. It's
Right, right.
enormous. That just kind of blew me away. I don't know about you, Alex.
Similar experience, just a space coming from Europe when everything is so crowded, and then coming to Canada, get out of the plane, and everything is big.
Yeah,
That's a huge.
Everything, everything's big, and then you have this vast like, freshwater lake,
yeah.
with like huge waves. So just having again this amazing juxtaposition now even closer, right? You've got this like amazing lake. So all I wanted to do, besides studying, mom and dad, all I wanted to do was play rugby and sail, and maybe go to the bar maybe once or twice. I didn't spend much time, in the
Of course
bars,
not.
but I'll tell you what I really enjoyed. Again, skipping class to go to Cubs games, which ended up being kind of this lifelong chase.
It's like Ferris
Um,
Bueller.
Pardon me?
Like Ferris Bueller.
Like Ferris Bueller. I tried to relive as many of my favorite movies as possible, including High Fidelity. I ended up moving to that same neighborhood many years later. But yeah, Loyola was great. It definitely set me on my path for, you know, not necessarily what I wanted to do, but the types of individuals I wanted to do it with,
Yeah.
right? So Loyola became, and Chicago in general, and my time there, really gave me a great perspective on how to pick a team and how to move forward, right? And so I lean on my guys constantly. Now you mentioned Sunstack, our latest venture. I've been leaning on guys who, I hit the pitch with 20 years ago, for their perspective and their expertise and their ideas. And it's made our offering that much better. So, was it my degree that really made a big difference, or was it the network and the understanding of people, and really how to build those bridges, how to
Yeah,
build connection.
I think. Do you consider yourself a late bloomer?
A late bloomer?
Yeah.
Um, in some ways,
Yeah.
I was like the first kid in my school to have a mustache.
Yeah.
So I don't think from a biological standpoint,
I was more. I
and
didn't mean it that way. I
I've
definitely
literally
meant
been
to mean.
6'2" and 250 since I was about 12 years old.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I've never rushed.
Yeah.
As you guys know, I didn't get married until in my late 30s. We're still kind of contemplating, do we want to have children? I mean, so I guess in some ways I'm a late bloomer, but it's been on my terms, on my time, and I don't think I really have very few regrets because of that.
Yeah. Like from my part, right? Like, I consider myself a late bloomer. I like, again, not biologically necessarily, but mentally, right? Like, there's always so much pressure growing up, especially in Europe. You got to do this, you got to do that. But it wasn't until like my 20s where I really started, like, hitting my career and knew what I wanted to do, which is like growing up in Europe, Alex, right? You're always kind of pushed. Like,
Exactly. There's a certain timeline. You have to do certain things at a certain time. Otherwise, you're the outcast and not good enough.
Got to go university.
Exactly.
Got to do this.
The pressure is up.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think some things are universal there.
Yeah.
Because even if it wasn't exerted on me and my siblings by our parents, society definitely places that, right? So I remember feeling a ton of anxiety in my 20s, actually. That was, I was graduating college. I was, getting jobs in and around Chicago, but none of them were really like leading to the next step. And I remember feeling really frustrated and kind of like had that failure complex. And my parents were like, what are you talking about? You're doing fine, and you haven't asked us for money in a long time. So just keep going. If you can make it in Chicago without needing too much help, you're doing fine. And I would say, I mean, if you're saying you got into your stride in your 20s and you felt that was late, I mean, I really hit my stride in my late 20s and into my 30s.
Yeah.
That was really kind of when I was actualizing what I felt I had to give the world. That was really when I was kind of plugged in and actually cared about, not that I didn't care about what I was doing before that, but I kind of felt how I mattered. And I felt what my contribution, or the lack of my contribution, was going to lead to in the long run. So I don't know if that's the most supremely conceited comment I've ever made, but it's probably close. Probably close. We can edit that out, right?
No. That's going to stay in, Joe. That's going to stay in.
Switching over to your hobbies, I saw pictures of a sailboat. I saw pictures of an electrified, renewable powered or assisted sailboat. Tell us more about
right down Alex's alley.
Exactly. I'm a tinkerer. I was fascinated about seeing those pictures.
Renewable, unlimited range sailboat. So like I said, I grew up on the Hudson River. We didn't have a ton of money. And I remember being with my friends, kind of watching the sailboats on the Hudson River, tacking back and forth and thinking, man, one day I'm going to be a rich guy with a sailboat, And then I got into college and I started learning sailing and being exposed to that world because I was on the Great Lakes, and I really enjoyed it. And I realized that only a few of the guys sailing boats were rich guys. And I was like, wow, I can actually play. This is something I can do. It's not just a dream. And so I had sailed. I had raced competitively on Lake Michigan with a number of boats that were being campaigned, and I grew this love for sailing. I had my own boat. I really enjoyed it. I loved the upkeep of it. I had an older boat that I had pretty well restored to pristine level. And although it wasn't the newest or largest boat in the marina, people would regularly walk by my boat and say, "Hey,
Wow.
man, nice boat," you know. And that really gave me a charge. I loved that. And so during the pandemic, my wife and I had always talked about like how great it would be to, eventually get a sailboat because we both love being on the water and, so on and so forth. So during the pandemic, we realized, okay, well, we got to have fun in a different way. So we pretty much searched for a derelict sailboat. Something that I knew. So we picked up a CNC 33, which for most people that doesn't mean a whole lot, but like if you're into sailboats, that's the equivalent of finding like a 1969 Chevy Camaro Z28,
Gotcha.
right? Only it didn't have a motor in it. In my case, for the analogy here, it did have a motor, it just didn't work, not well anyway. So we pick up this boat out on the Long Island Sound, and with this like half functioning motor, we sail. We sail one of the most complicated or dangerous passages on all the East Coast, which is called Hell's Gate, which is the East River going down around Manhattan Island, and then we did like a loop around the Statue of Liberty, and then headed up the Hudson River home, right?
Nice.
And this thing was like not working. I had a few friends who had traveled to help us make this transit, and they were like, "Dude, you have a lot of work to do on this boat." I said, "Yeah, I know." And the engine died right before we're entering the East River. I'm like, "Do you guys want to do this?" And they're like, "Hell yeah!" So we're practically just like running the East River under sail, and we're between skyscrapers, passing the UN building. So it was kind of a extreme event, but we brought the boat home. I removed all of the old internal combustion engine, the ICE infrastructure, the fuel tanks, lines, all of the cooling system, right down to the shaft to the propeller. And I had some really great people help out. Friends of mine from the marina, my buddy Matt Stanton, who is a solar contact, he came up and he was like helping me scrub out the bilge. I mean, like doing like disgusting work, and it was fantastic. And so I found a 10 kilowatt brushless motor that I was able to fix to this propeller shaft, and there's a lot of great options out there. So there's people that have done this before, right? And so I started looking at the different versions of everyone and how they've configured this electrical refit, and I kind of made this like Frankenstein version of the system, and it's operating so well. So I have a Mott Energy 10 kilowatt motor. And then I essentially power that. I have an ATV controller, like an electric ATV controller that controls all that. And then a Victron energy system for the charging and a 5 kilowatt little storage for it. So, that gives me a really fair amount of range, especially because I'm not in open water. I'm on the Hudson River, and so when we do sail in larger places, typically we're sailing, right? So the electric motor really only does so much for us. And, I was doing the math from our full charge last year, even with the recharge, when you look at just what was drawn out, we probably could have only charged those batteries one time last year for how much we actually used the motor.
That's amazing.
And it's so quiet and so pleasant. You know, the times when you're going to want to have a little motor going as you're sailing is downwind. And when you're sailing downwind, traditionally, if because it's a slower point of sail unless you put up more complicated sails that require more hands to use. If you're just out for a simple sail and you're just jib and main, like having a little bit of assistance from the motor is nice. The trouble with this has always been that you get the cockpit and the cabin full of fumes because you're going downwind. So the exhaust leaves the back of the vessel and then just
right in
folds right back over, and so it makes people seasick. It makes people not feel so great. And so this has been completely alleviated. My winterizing of the boat was as simple as just pulling the batteries off. Yep. It has made every aspect of boating that much more pleasant. And then also I know that during, there will never be a case where as I'm refilling the boat with fuel that I spill some into the waterway. I know from a perspective of being a steward of the natural world that I live in, I am not contaminating it any further with my recreation, and I'm not saying everyone needs to live in that way, but for me, that's very important. And that's kind of how I got into the career that I'm in now, right? It was important for me to do something that, promoted the values, of how I want to live and where I want to live. So to bring converting my sailboat into a life lesson, I really enjoyed the whole process. I had lots of support, not from anyone knowledgeable about this. And even calling Victron, if there's anything that I would ask them to do, is have more documentation. And I found everything I needed to, and I love Victron. They were what great hardware and equipment to work with, especially in a marine setting. But I wasn't prepared for how they manage customer service. Everything's done through agents.
Exactly.
It's not done with
it's a
representatives.
Very different system.
So I was just thrown off a little bit. Because I'm a pretty tactile person. I want it very defined. Like, oh, okay, I'm going to call this guy, and then this person will answer this question.
Next time, do what I and most of our customers do, and just call Alex.
I'm not the boat expert, though, but when it comes to Victron, we can certainly help. Very good transition from the sailing, the renewable component of that, or the steward of the land. Solar fits right in.
Solar.
Yeah. How did you get into solar?
Another long story. Hope you guys are ready. Buckle in. So solar was kind of an accident that I planned. I was in Chicago and I was running a community-based behavioral health center. All of the non-clinical operations were in my purview. We were very successful and we were having a great time. And we were helping a lot of people. And I realized after a while, like, okay, my work here is done. I've used my business acumen to actually help people, and that was the goal. I've done about as much as I can do. Time to move on. I want a new challenge, right? And because it was either invest more and keep going down that path by way of additional education. And I realized that no, I didn't want to invest more in that. And I actually wanted to do other things that I felt were important. And so I started investigating options. I took off on a motorcycle hiatus to kind of get some perspective. I took off on my motorcycle with a fly fishing rod and a duffel bag. And I ended up riding that motorcycle around for about 2 years. And while doing a loop through Nova Scotia for Cape Breton's Bicentennial, or Centennial. I don't remember what that was. Anyway, I was in Scotia, and that's where I met my wife,
I was
Stephanie.
just gonna ask, is that trip where you met your wife? Because she's Canadian.
Best fishing trip I ever went on. I
You
caught
caught
the
a big one, yeah.
Yeah. And so I met Stephanie. We met at a cafe, had breakfast. It was amazing. There's more to that story, but we'll talk about that another time. And we just, I knew that I didn't want to go too far. My plan was to ride this motorcycle actually down to Patagonia. So I was like, I had kind of taken care of what I needed to here and with family and friends, and I was like gonna try to keep extending the adventure. And I met Stephanie, and I decided, okay, I'm going to hang out in New York for a while because that's the closest place where I can stay for free to where this woman is. And I took a job making craft cider on a farm, and that was really fun. And I had a great time with those guys. Bad Seed Cider, just fantastic, fantastic team. And I'm dating this woman internationally, so like the little bit of money I have in my pocket, I'm just blowing through, right? Like just like, I'm going from like sleeping in a hammock, like, on land that no one is going to care that I'm sleeping on a hammock with my motorcycle, to like buying flights on a regular basis. So it's getting pretty expensive. One of my best friends, Mike Dunlap, who I had known from years in Chicago and Northwest Indiana, he called me up and he said, "Hey man, I'm working with this solar company, and they have this amazing product. The technology is not widely known, but I think it's like the best thing. You got to check it out. I think it's the next thing. And it virtually unknown. So it's like a startup. We'll just treat this thing like a startup, and we'll get it going." And so I am thinking like, man, you're really cramping my style. I'm trying to like, I have a reel for doing voice acting. I'm trying to get like a job with a cartoon or like in commercials and stuff. So I'm like really pursuing that. I'm making cider, living this very artistic life, right? On my motorcycle. But the months are getting colder. And I'm realizing, okay, I'm gonna have to get a car, and if I'm gonna keep seeing this woman in Nova Scotia, like I better bring in more than like art money. And so I'm like, yeah, I'll meet you and your team. Let's take a look at this stuff. And so I met with Mike Dunlap and Takashi Chiyoda. They flew out to Jersey, and I'd been looking at the equipment online. I knew nothing. Like I had done summers like doing roofing and doing contractor work. Like my best friend as a kid, his dad had a remodeling company, so he would hire us to do demolition and do some like light remodeling. So it was pretty handy. Like I could fix pretty much anything, but like, I'm looking at this thing and I'm really leaning on Mike Dunlap. He had been a contractor for insurance remediation for as long as I had known him, which at that point was like 15 years. So he's telling me that this is the thing. And I'm like, okay, well, prove it. Show me. Like, what am I looking at? I don't even know. And so we were looking at some of the original roof tech stuff. And I'm like, oh, I was like, okay, so how is this different? And they started showing me these other products. And I'm like, well, duh. This seems like really like a easy thing to wrap your head around, right? And they both looked at me and they're like, well, it's exceedingly difficult. So, but we'll offer you a really decent wage. And all we ask is that you give us a year trying to promote this product throughout the Northeast, because we need someone who's from there, who understands the people and the culture. And I'm like, yeah, it sounds like a cool deal. And solar's awesome. And when I had left Chicago, I'd promised myself that whatever I got into next would be in line with my values and my interests, right? Being an outdoorsman, loving business and negotiation and communication and needing to have enough money in the bank to travel to Nova Scotia to see this beautiful woman I had met. I just had to keep it. And so it made a big deal. And I told Mike Dunlap, I said, look, buddy, we've been best friends for a long time. The second this gets weird, I'm out. And he was like, it's not going to get weird because it's us. You know, and Mike and I had a long history of doing very difficult things together without any voices raising, which you guys have known me for a while. I haven't even been able to keep my cool on this podcast. Like, I get elevated, like, you know, doing the dishes. So like, you know, Mike was like, dude, it's totally gonna be cool. And just like he said, we were able to bring Roof Tech from, you know, point A to point B over the course of, you know, 5 or 6 years. Completely transforming their brand visibility, revenue, all that stuff. We really helped bring that brand to the next level.
You guys built an amazing team together as well. That's I think the biggest part.
Yeah, it was a blast. I mean, we were having fun because we were doing this totally different thing. It was absolutely breaking people's brains, and the other participants in the racking sphere, you know, their incredulous reaction to what I was doing and the momentum that we were building only fueled me more. You know, I loved running into people being like, oh, this is just a fad. It will go away. There's no way this technology is like the thing. And, you know, you fast forward 8 years and here we are, and every major racking manufacturer has kind of turned to our way of doing things, you know, methodologies, materials. There's slight variation, but, you know, people are no longer destroying people's roofs to install solar. You know, they're doing it in a much more mindful way, right? Like top down is just better from every angle, and including the top. The great thing about Roof Tech was it really gave me exposure to and credibility in this amazing industry that I've grown to love. You know, I just was in Boston and I was barely talking business. I was just having a great time seeing people that I had been working with all these years and catching up. And it was just fantastic, you know. Even saw the old Roof Tech guys. I hung out with them more than anyone probably. So you know that team, they've got some real stars over there, and you know I still think they're doing some of the best work in that space. You know, for various reasons. I'm not going to sit here and plug Roof Tech over and over again. You know, I really, honestly, I think they've held true to their guns, and they've maintained the integrity of kind of doing it how they do it without folding to the pressure from the marketplace. And I think that matters, right? And you know, as we segue into now at Sunstack, you know, the team is what brought me to Sunstack. Right. If it wasn't Mike and Taka and Kobayashi and the rest of the gang, I don't know that I would do it again. Racking is like growing up, you know, or making a living in Chicago. If you can make it in racking, you can make it anywhere in solar because it's a grind, you know. And I just, you know, I maintain my optimism and positivity everywhere I go. I mean, that's how I lead. That's how I manage most things, and that has paid dividends, right? So pivoting to Sunstack, the integrity that we've seen in displayed with the Roof Tech offering, you know, we're essentially, we've got that same integrity in mind. Obviously, we're doing a different thing, so we feel like we can do it better, right? But we're keeping in mind how to please the market while also maintaining the integrity of what we know to be, you know, the best way to do this, right? And I think we're doing really great. So far, so good. The response has been supportive and incredible. We've had great input from contractor partners, and that's something that we get a little more of at Sunstack than previously. You know, we're working with contractors building these products, and it's allowed 9-year-old me to live one of my dreams. I now am an actual inventor. You know, name on patents, like I've invented things, and so coming full circle and in the whole conversation, like, where did I grow up? I grew up in New York. I grew up a poor kid trying to figure things out. And I'm still, this dirtbag guy in upstate New York trying to figure things out, right? Like trying to build solutions so that other people's workflow and asset is whole for the long run. And I think that's important. I think that's the integrity that kind of keeps us running every day.
What can you tell us about Sunstack, and what makes you guys different? What's your value proposition, etc.?
Sunstack is, the best way to put Sunstack, we have this motto where we go further sooner together. That's in our decision making between me, Mike, and Taka. That's dealing with our customers. That's dealing with our partners. We've actually brought partners who are EPCs in the U.S. Into an ownership stake in Sunstack. And so they have been integral in helping us develop products. And we could have gotten money from private equity, right? Who can't, right? They're willing to invest in almost anything. But we felt like, actually working with people who have skin in the game, that actually can help us innovate, that can actually help us, navigate, this environment. That was more valuable than the money, right? Because, it doesn't take a lot of money to build a racking company. It takes a lot of stomach, right? It takes a strong stomach, patience, and good planning. And the ability to forge strong relationships. That's Racking Startup 101. Glad you're in the conversation. You can attend my masterclass anytime you want. But seriously, like Sunstack, our value prop, it's really, rather than saying we're partnering with people and just throwing logos on a flyer and having a drink up, we're actually inviting people to be a part of us. And so that has really been powerful. The last several months, like really since Vegas, when, we're talking to people, we haven't even really been talking about our products and our solutions. We've been talking about our business model. Because people are hungry for change. People want new, people want more context. People want something a little bit more meaningful. I know these are pretty lofty platitudes coming from a racking guy. I get it. But it's all in our day to day, as insignificant as racking is, because a lot of people just don't care about racking. It's not a big deal. Until it is, until things have gone wrong, and now you've got to deal with a customer who's unhappy because there's a leak on the roof, or because something didn't pass an inspection, or so on and so forth. But in spite of kind of being like the red-headed stepchild of the solar world, because it's the least sexy thing, we still try to make it easy for people to do what they set out to do, right? The whole idea of being a partner with Sunstack is we kind of make sure that your procurement for your BOS in terms of racking is kind of on autopilot for our partners, right? Yeah. Customers, obviously, they're going to get a great opportunity to work with their favorite distributors and whatnot. But the value prop has been, cutting edge design, keeping the integrity of attachments to the roof, first in order, right? Like, forget about the marketing, forget about the gimmicks. Does it make sense for the job that's trying to be done, right? We see, like I mentioned before, other racking companies have come out with materials and products that utilize materials and methodologies that were similar to what we were doing all this time. And I like that. I like that the whole industry is moving in that direction. I think they're going to learn some of the things that we learned at Roof Tech over many, many years. Unfortunately, they're going to learn it on, customers' roofs. And that's something that we kind of bring to the table. We bring in expertise. We know what's going to work and what's not, because we've been looking at this and only this for so many years. And so, north of the attachment, We've got some really exciting products, full rail and all that. We've
So you
got
roll rail as
tile
well?
replacement. We're developing a flat roof product for commercial, as well as a railless product that's due out at the end of the year.
Okay.
And we're moving through all of these with contractors and EPCs who kind of have skin in the game in all those different sectors. Like, people want a ground mount solution. It's like, okay, well, what do you think about a carport, like for a residential carport, And we kind of are bringing these ideas together and thinking, okay, what's your desire to sell to your customer? And then what can we realistically do in kind of like a kit environment, right? Like a pre-engineered racking solution. Because what contractors and EPCs think ought to be able to be done really becomes quite difficult when you're actually in the application stage, right? And so it's been great to work with all these different contractors and kind of dream up the solutions that will fit their needs. Besides being a part and having an actual stake in their racking supply, just the innovation and the inclusion that we offer. We've gotten a lot of really positive feedback. People love this either from a financial standpoint. They're a big fan of what we're doing because they have like the joy of innovating, because like you and me, Alex, they were always tinkerers and they always like thought like, if you just do it like this, it would be so much better. And I get that, man. Like I'm living that life. And then there's the other people that just like want to be part of how solar is going to be done, right? Like I've said it a lot the last few months. The way the solar industry has operated the last 5 years, the next 5 years are going to be very different than that. The next 5 years will probably not look too much like the last 5 years. And I think we're all, I think in the US market specifically, I think a lot of people are trying to figure out what that next 5 years is going to look like. And everyone's anxious to kind of like be on the front. They want to catch the first wave.
What do you think it's going to look like? What do you think is going to be the big difference?
Loaded question. I think mid-size installers. I think mid-size installers are going to have the greatest upside. I think strong national players. We know some that are kind of taking their lumps but weathering the storm. Those guys are super strong, super smart, and I think they're going to come out on top. So I think we're going to see the quality players rise, right? I think at every tranche, every tier, there's probably some bad actors, right? You've got national guys, national size players that are great, and national size players that are okay, and national size players that like it's probably, not awful, right? That we're kind of seeing this correction in the market. But when you say stuff like that, it's like, well, these are real companies with real people, with owners and employees, and my heart breaks for the whole system. But my heart isn't breaking to see really bad PPAs that are bad for consumers and bad for the industry going away. Like I'm not sad about seeing some of those practices getting a light shown on it and saying, okay, well, you were participating in that, so maybe don't cry too hard. Maybe if you're still interested, why don't you just try again and try better? And that's kind of my feeling about this. I'm a competitor, and I think like you guys have watched me, and I'm always kind of ready to tear someone's head off about something. I guess what I've learned, the next 5 years, if I'm on, I'm like ready to go. And I think a lot of people in the industry are like that. I hope they learn what I've learned is like, you're not always on, right? You're not always like fighting for something. And I don't really know how I got onto that as much as I just think the next 5 years, we're going to have to be a lot more mindful It's not about competition. It's more about operation. It's more about how does everything fit together flawlessly, even with your competitors, right? How do we make the industry strong enough to last, all these years that we're hoping for projected growth year over year? How do we keep it all together and keep consumers believing in the products that we're building, and distributing and constructing on people's property? Like, that's the most important thing. And I think we're seeing some of that consumer confidence in what renewables can offer kind of dwindling a little bit. And I think what we need to all remember is there's room at the table for everyone. And by maintaining as many of the good players at the table as we can, we're going to get more positive innovation, and we're going to get more positive outcomes for everyone involved.
Yeah, I always say competition is such a good thing, right? It's what capitalism is built on. I'm grateful we have really good competitors ourselves, right? Because if I look back to like 2012, 2013, right, and what we were doing then, and all these things we've done in the meantime, online shop, free shipping, like all these things we wouldn't have done, and we wouldn't have improved the customer experience if we didn't have any competition. Because like, why would you, right? You're just going to maximize profits at that point.
Right.
So competition is good, and that's why I always say, I'm thankful for our competitors, and I'm sure you are too, right? Like at Roof Tech and now at Sunstack, I think.
Absolutely. I look at I hang out with other racking guys. Like when I go to these shows, like I'm laughing it up with people from all over. Since I left Roof Tech, I have committed some consulting hours to most of the racking manufacturers in the industry, because they're interested in understanding or knowing a little bit better what me and my team have found out over the years. And I do so, people are like, why would you give the competition and like strategies and answers? Because I am in it for the improvement of our condition. And I don't believe that I believe you can have both. I believe you can do what's best for you and for the industry, simultaneously. These are not mutually exclusive concepts, right? I can help people make better top-down products because I know that even if company A has the most perfect top-down product with the most perfect, module clamping and every I dotted and T crossed, they're only ever going to get a certain percentage of usership for a lot of reasons. They don't like the color of the logo. They met a rep from there 15 years ago and they don't like those guys. Like there's all these like really irrational decisions why, you'll never, no company is going to ever have the whole pie. That'd be silly to imagine. And so I never fight for that. It's never part of my conversation. Me and my team need enough to carry on. Me and my team need enough to innovate the next round. And I think that's the important part to keep in the mentality in this industry, especially during the tough times. Yeah, because I want those guys there. I want them to be pushing us for the next round,
And it's in all our best interest that the industry grows, right? Which is really the most important thing, is more solar, right? It's going to help all of us, our competitors, ourselves, our customers, right?
Absolutely. Competition and I was an athlete. I played football and track and whatnot in high school, and then rugby in college. Never played baseball. But then after I left college, we were talking about, I interned. I was a paid intern for the Chicago Cubs.
Yeah, tell us about that, actually, while we're at it.
The really important part here is competition and sports. Sports teaches us amazing things, right? And I'm not going to go on a diatribe about sport, but what sport has meant to me, like for instance, in my college years playing rugby, you go and you bash each other's brains out on the pitch, and then both teams get together for a meal and some drinks afterwards, right? And everyone's singing songs arm in arm. Doesn't matter what jersey you're wearing, because we all have a common love for that sport. right? And we all want to see each other play well, and we all want to see each other move on and enjoy that sport longer. And I think there's a lot of that that comes into play, especially in my mentality when it comes to um, really what the industry will tolerate, right? And so sport, like I said, it always teaches us lessons. I wanted a career in sport. Like we were alluded to, my first job out of school, I was a paid intern for the front office of the Chicago Cubs, and I worked in stadium operations, which most of the time was a very, very unglamorous role, because I was tasked with observing and reporting on all of the parking operations and sanitary operations of the staff, and in the community. So Wrigley Field is right in the middle of a neighborhood in Chicago, like among houses and restaurants. There is not a lot of place to park. There's not a lot of place for people in general. Their garbage, any of that. So like the city of Chicago had all these ordinances in place for the Cubs that, the Cubs had to provide X amount of parking off-site with, remote shuttling and all this stuff. And the garbage collection had to be done. And I was tasked with making sure and reporting to my team that it was all being done as it was supposed to. It was awful. It was awesome to say I worked at the Cubs and, being able to provide every department got a bunch of tickets for each home game and they rarely all got used. So my friends were like, dude, you have the coolest job in Chicago. They're coming and watching baseball games. And I'm like, yeah, as I'm like walking to a parking lot, 16 blocks away from the stadium. So there was that, but then the other side of being in stadium ops, was kind of the coolest thing. Besides what happened externally, we had club box patrons whose view was being blocked by the food, by like the hot dog and the beer guys, right? And so I had to randomly sample the different club sections, sit in those sections, and then observe how frequently the food vendors would come and block the view of patrons. So like little kids would be coming. I got my clipboard, because this is definitely analog. This is like prior to 2005. And so like, I've got my like clipboard and everything, and kids are coming up. They're like, "Oh, mister, are you a scout? Like, what are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm counting hot dogs, kid. I'm counting hot dogs, And it was just so much fun. It was such an awesome experience. I was hoping to parlay that into getting on one of the ops teams that work, because they're all contractors that work for the IOC and for the Olympics, right? And so I was hoping to catch a ride to the Beijing Olympics, and that kind of, hopefully was going to parlay into something more to do with rugby or whatever, but I ended up taking, some other job in Chicago, doing a very square kind of thing, just kind of a placeholder. But baseball has kind of always been a part of what we're doing. And so like, besides rebuilding a sailboat, me and my team, in all of our copious free time from launching a racking company, we're all kind of like always about solutions, and we love sport and we love all this stuff. So we started creating safety equipment for baseball. So we have we have our Go Base product, which is a sliding mitt and elbow guard. And I got to tell you, manufacturing sports apparel, very different than manufacturing racking equipment.
No doubt.
But it was a blast. We've been having fun. The response we're getting on this thing from pro players, college players, kids, they all think it's amazing. First base coaches love us now because if you've been to a Little League game recently, first base coaches end up with a suitcase full of like sliding mitts, elbow pads, all the safety gear that the kids take off at first base before they start running. So this kind of pares some of that down. and it's been an absolute hoot. Taka's children are baseball aged, and they're actually really good. So it's been a blast to like kind of follow their career and go to the baseball functions, because like we're all suckers for this stuff. We just love it. And then being able to contribute, right? So like seeing something that can be improved, and then taking it upon ourselves to go ahead and dig in and improve it. It's kind of just what we do. And and even though it's seemingly unconnected or disconnected from our primary functions, it's all kind of like works seamlessly for our team, because we're all kind of spazzes. So like we need to talk about racking, and then we'll like switch over to baseball for 5 minutes, and then we'll come back to racking, and a lot of like how the podcast has gone today.
Exactly.
I know it's difficult to wrangle me, but you guys just did an amazing job.
That's what we love about you, is that there's so many interesting facets about you and your life, and that's why we wanted to talk to you.
It's unmedicated adult ADHD. There's a simple answer for this. But
there's the clip that goes online.
That is also my superpower.
Yeah, exactly. And going back to the baseball equipment, I mean, you said Taka, right, is part of Team Yum, Taka, and Mike, and he's Japanese, right? So Japan, obviously, also a big baseball country, just like the United States. So
yeah, they just we have our play like a samurai, right? So like a lot of our branding has to do with the Japanese success in baseball. They just won the Little League World Championship.
Yep.
Right. So like Japan is just, and then there's some like pretty big standout players that have garnered a lot of attention. So kids, like when they see the samurai, they're like, oh, yeah, man. And so as much as I try not to have products just predicated on the marketing, it's been kind of cool to be on the front end of the marketing with this, because it's a blast to see the response.
What a great time for Japanese baseball, right? At the moment, you're saying a Little League World Series, but then also the baseball World Cup, I guess is what it's called, right? That was last year. Best player in baseball. Well, probably best player ever, right? We get Japanese player there, both pitcher and a fielder, right? So.
Oh yeah, Oshido. Ah, man, I don't remember. Let's edit this out.
We can.
But
embarrassing.
What's his name? He just signed that huge deal where he like
with the Dodgers.
It was probably one of the smartest. Ohtani.
Ohtani, that's it. Yes.
Shohei Ohtani. So Ohtani just inked a deal, one of the largest deals in baseball. And the kid is so smart that he sacrificed half of what they'd owe him on his contract to be paid out later with interest.
Yeah.
So that they had room in the budget to build a team around him.
Exactly. It's a $700 million deal. I think it's actually probably the biggest in sports ever. It is just enormous.
And Ohtani's amazing.
Yes.
I mean, he's just fantastic. And yeah, so I think it was the Baseball World Series, not the Little League World Series.
Okay. I thought maybe they won both.
But, yeah.
But yeah, that's baseball. Alex. Alex is not a big. Alex is being really quiet.
Exactly. Not a big sports guy, so.
Right.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. I've always been a sports guy who I prefer to play. Like I would rather go play a pickup game of kickball than watch the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'd rather be out there doing it than watching it. But if it's on, I can't help myself. But it's difficult to prioritize sitting down and watching a game when there's so many things to tinker with in this world.
Yeah, and getting into the sports industry too is such a tough thing, right? I studied sports management myself. Always wanted to get into sports, but doesn't pay well. I mean, unless you're at the very top, it doesn't pay well. There's lots of competition. You get the crappy tasks, right?
It's the job everyone wants to do, man.
Work weekends.
I was watching parking lots
Yeah.
for half of my Major League Baseball career, so I get it.
Yeah. Taking it quickly back to the racking side of things before we wrap up here. What are some of the big innovations you're expecting and some of the big challenges the racking industry has?
So, big innovations that I'm expecting. When I was what struck me and the team most in Las Vegas this year was just how many novel solutions there were to so many options. So I'm very interested in the cable racking. Excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
The cable racking systems that get anchored into the earth
For ground mount.
It is very interesting. I'd like to see how that plays out because cable is a lot more sustainable than big aluminum and steel extrusions. I think doing more with less. I think that's something that we've always tried to accomplish. As you know, I've always been a proponent of railless.
Yeah.
Only because it takes less material. Anything that's less material that does the same work, I'm always going to tend to like that more. And with the Federal Trade Commission here in the States has filed a suit against 15 other countries who were subsidizing aluminum extrusions for PV racking as well as the frames for PV modules, essentially creating an environment where it was impossible for U.S. extruders and fabricators to compete against their international counterparts. And that is going to be, it's similar to the anti-dumping, anti-circumvention case that we saw with the modules. I don't know that it's going to have the same impacts because there's not the same commodity-based pricing that you get with modules. So I don't see it making that big of a wave and being as destructive as the module case was, which hasn't actually been settled. There's only a moratorium, so we actually are going to be coming back to that, which could be problematic. But in terms of racking, I definitely see there's going to be a shift to manufacturing here in North America. I'm particularly excited about the opportunity to work with Canadian extruders and supply on some of what we're trying to build. And we've been building relationships with U.S. extruders and suppliers, and I think you're going to see a lot more of that. Unfortunately, that means prices are going to rise in racking. The days of companies expecting to see 5.5 cents, 6 cent per watt racking. I never thought it was sustainable before, and I definitely don't think it is now. And, for years, I kept telling people, like, aluminum has gone nuts. It's 3 times the price it was this time last year. How is it not manifesting in the bottom line of your racking, right? How is this possible? Well, the FTC suit kind of shows. I mean, it was being heavily subsidized to the tune of like 283% or something like that in China. I don't know the exact number, but triple digits and not small triple digits, right? So like, we're going to see a correction on those prices, which means that, my beloved technology, railless racking, I think we're going to see more people wanting to gravitate towards that, or just less material intensive solutions in general, right? And so I think we're going to see a pivot back to that a little bit. I think you're going to see more people wanting to be smart about material usage. Unfortunately, I think the doodad and gadget and gizmo era is in full swing. You know, we kind of opened up Pandora's box when we disrupted the roof attachment side of things, because now anyone, you know, there's a lot of solutions that are coming to market now for top-down attachment that they look really cool. I got to tell you, they look cool. But when you actually start to unpack it, this doesn't solve anything, and it doesn't make for better outcomes for consumers and installers. And people are going to be, manufacturers are going to be bumping into a lot of stuff as they figure out their top-down programs. You know, some have it pretty well keyed in already, and they'll get better. Others have a ways to go. But you know, that's my humble opinion. And I think so. We're going to see that. So we're going to see higher prices on rail. I think we'll see a pivot because of that to less material intensive stuff. And then we're going to see marketing, unfortunately, play more of a role in racking technologies than actual quality. I mean, if Vegas and the shows that I've been to since Vegas are any indicator, unfortunately, I think that's going to be the case, because I hear exuberance for products on the market right now that I just, you know, I observed close up. I looked under the hood. I talked to the engineers responsible, and I wasn't satisfied. You'd never get that on my roof. And, you know, people are like, "Oh my God, have you seen this thing? It's like amazing." And I'm like, "Oh boy," you know. So, you know, and not to be cynical, and I want everyone to find the success they're looking for, but I also want people to, I don't know, create good products that promote the industry and promote, you know, the outcomes that our consumers are looking for, right? Like that's really what I'm always after. So when I criticize something, it's not because I think it's bad. It's because when you follow this thing downstream, it's not going to be good, and we know, and we can with math show why, right? So it's not even opinion. It's kind of like you're making a bad decision, but just to maintain market share, you're doing this thing. Mm-hmm. So unfortunately, I think that's going to be a part of the landscape, you know, and so, you know, we're going to do everything we can to stem that tide, right? We're going to try to get out there and avoid the doodad gizmo and gadget craze, and just kind of keep our head down and run our own race, you know.
Sounds good, yeah.
It's really the only thing you can do.
People love gadgets, right? Salespeople love gadgets. Like we see this on like inverters as well, right? Like everyone loves an optimizer.
I was just about to say earlier on, the gizmo stage is the optimizer time of the string inverters, for example. Yeah, something new to sell, something that supposedly addresses a problem for a lot of cases, but
it may or may not. In some cases it
yes,
does, right?
But a lot of cases, you trade some of the advantages with some other problems down the road.
You know, and well said, Alex. Well said. You know, but people love it.
Exactly.
You know, I always equate it as a fly fisherman. You go into a shop, you know, there's the boxes, the wood boxes of all the flies, and you see some outrageous flies, and you know, these patterns aren't really to catch trout.
Yeah.
And you know, it's just like
you're the trout.
You're the trout, right? Like that time was flying. The fly was tied to catch you, and get you to spend your $2.50 on this thing. You know.
Do you golf?
Fortunately, I do not golf.
Okay. Because that's the same, right?
I have a golf bag full of golf clubs and everything I would need to go golfing. But I've got to be honest. I really suck at it. With all the years I've spent trying to be a golfer, I just still suck. And on a sunny day in spring, I'd rather be on my sailboat.
Yeah.
You know, like, and there's always that trade-off. Like the time you need to do some things, are also the time you need that you would want to do the other thing. And, in that competition, the thing I'm good at and interested in and can tinker with, or the thing that I absolutely suck at and people are going to laugh at, I'm probably going to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just asking because golf clubs are the same thing, right? All these golf clubs that are supposed to help me hit the ball straight, but I can still not hit it straight. So. And
do they have Top Golf in Toronto?
They do have something similar here. Actually, really close to our office. I forget what it's called, but it's similar with the cameras and everything. And we did Top Golf in Vegas as well when we were down there for RE Plus.
Yeah.
And it is so much fun.
What a great time.
Yeah.
So, not a huge fan of golfing. I like the workout. I like the walk. And I like the beverages that are offered on a golf
really
course.
Good beverages.
Great beverages. Yeah. Great they really dialed that part of the game in.
Yeah.
But the Top Golf, man, that really I've only done it a few times. And as a non-golfer, I know there's guys that are like, dude, I live in Top Golf. I'm like, great, that's awesome. Don't beat me too bad. But it creates the middle ground, right? Like you're able to not be a very good golfer, but still manage to have fun and do okay. And so next time I'm in Toronto, you bring me to that knockoff Top Golf.
Yeah, let's go there.
That'd be a good time.
With that being said, let's wrap it up here. Again, thank you very much, Joe. How can people get a hold of you if they want to reach out to you?
I would definitely say LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the best way to find me. Joe Perez. There's probably no better way to do it. My email is long and cumbersome. But check out my LinkedIn. My contact info is on there, and I'm always happy to dive into a conversation with friends and colleagues.
Awesome, Joe.
Thanks so much.
Till next time.
Yeah, guys, thank you so much.
Cheers.
Take care.
Bye-bye.